all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we begin public service announcements, I just want to note that Chair Mark Carrata is not here this evening. He's attending to a family obligation. So we can go now to public service announcements. Virginia?
Okay, first up, we have the Town of Chelmsford public notice for the Fall 2023 annual meeting. The Town of Chelmsford will convene the 2023 Fall Town Meeting on Monday, October 16th, 2023. Articles to be included on the warrant must be submitted to the office of the town manager at 50 Billrica Road prior to 4 p.m. on Monday, August 7th, 2023. Petitioned articles must carry the signatures of at least 10 voters. For more information, please contact the town manager's office at 978-250-5202. And next up, we have an announcement for the Chelmsford Public Schools. They're having a hiring event on Tuesday, July 25th at 2 p.m. at the Town Hall offices at 50 Billrica Road. They are looking to fill positions for foreign language teachers and ESL instructors, extended day counselors, food service general helpers, substitute teachers, lunch recess aides, and more. And they're doing this in cooperation with the Mass Hire Lowell Career Center. You can pre-register at masshirelowellcc.com/Chelmsford Schools. And next up, we have the Chelmsford Military Community Covenant Task Force. Invites the community to attend their military appreciation cookout to show our support to our local veterans and military members for their service and sacrifice. The cookout is going to be held on Tuesday, August 8th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Chelmsford Lodge of Elks Pavilion at 300 Littleton Road. This is a free event, and they will have hot dogs, hamburgers, watermelon desserts, soft drinks, and a cash bar.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is public input. Is there anybody that would like to speak to us this evening about anything? Anybody on Zoom?
I don't see anybody coming off their video or raising their hand for public input.
Okay, apparently we have no public input this evening. Okay, committee vacancies? Want to get those?
So these are the committee vacancies as of today, July 24th. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee has one 3-year term open. The Board of Assessors has one 3-year term open. The Commission on Disabilities has one unexpired 3-year term ending June 30th, 2025, and two 3-year terms ending June 30th, 2026. The Community Action Program Committee has one unexpired 3-year term ending in 2024. The Council on Aging Board has one unexpired 3-year term ending in 2025 and one 3-year term. The Cultural Council has three 3-year terms. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee has one unexpired 3-year term ending in 2025. The Holiday Decorating Committee has one unexpired term ending in 2023. The Parade Committee, all applicants are welcome. Those are 1-year terms. And the Recycling Committee has two unexpired 3-year terms ending in 2024. Roberts Field Advisory has two unexpired 3-year terms ending in 2024. And the Tree Committee has one 3-year term. If you are interested in serving on a town board or committee, please complete an online application available on the town website. And for more information, you can contact the town manager's office at 978-250-5202 or email at tmoffice@chelmsfordma.gov.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have our first public hearing this evening is for the establishment. Do you want to come up and tell us a little bit about what you're doing here?
Thank you all. all for seeing us tonight. I'm Matt from the establishment, and we are looking at increasing our function capacity in our 2 function rooms upstairs. We're actually going to lease more space from the Gillettes to expand one of our function rooms to turn it into 3.
So you're taking the one big one and making it,
The one medium-sized one. So as of right now, it's our smaller function room that will be turning into 3. That's correct.
okay,
Because there's space on the other side of that one, so to tie it all in together in for the best egress is to go through the current function room, split that in half, and then there'd be one more function room straight ahead.
Can you, when you say the current function room, which one? The one like at the top of the stairs?
At the top of the stairs, yes. You go to the top of the stairs and straight ahead.
Okay.
hang on just a
Could you
second.
excuse me, I'm gonna get somebody out of this meeting.
It's a hack.
Yeah, it's a bomber, I'm just gonna get rid of them.
Wait, is there a bomber?
Wait, is there a bomber? Guys, get this bomber out now. Guys. Get this bomber out.
Okay. You should-
All set?
I think so, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so, yeah, Matt, if you want to address Virginia's question.
I just,
So when you go to the top of the stairs, if you were to go straight ahead, that current function room would be acquiring space on the other side of that function room. So that function room would actually become kind of the lobby that would turn into 3 different function rooms.
I see, and the one, if you go up to the top of the stairs and hook a right, that one's staying
That
as
one's
it
staying
is?
the exact same,
Okay.
untouched, yes.
Same thing. Can you mute,
We
can
got
you mute
another
all?
one, hang on.
Mute all on Zoom.
No, they're muted.
So the main change you're making here, other than redesigning your function rooms, is also your capacity.
Correct, that is correct.
I just booted them, go ahead.
Okay, all right. Anybody else on the board have any questions for Matt?
How? I don't know. Does anyone have concerns? 350 to 416, it looks like.
That's correct.
And the outdoor seating is nothing different than what you were doing during COVID?
That's correct as well. And that was, during COVID, that was no seating increase because we removed tables inside to
Right.
use for the outdoor seating.
But it says you're adding outdoor seating? It says expand function rooms from 2 to 4, addition of outdoor seating here?
Yeah, at first I put the application as continued use of the outdoor seating because we had the pandemic grant for seating outside. So we've already got it's already existing, it's already been approved by every department, so it's just a matter of keeping it going. But Ms. Bruce told me I was better off saying, putting it in that way, the verbiage that way.
Yeah, I think a lot of the, during COVID, it was meant to be temporary, and you just
Correct.
want to make it permanent.
I just want to make it permanent, yes.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Anybody have any questions or comments about this application? Nobody in this room? Do we have anybody on Zoom?
No.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. I'll make a motion to approve the alteration of premises on the all alcoholic beverages restaurant license for Matthew Marie's LLC, doing business as The Establishment at 75 Princeton Street as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Good luck.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, our second public hearing has to do with double poles. And I believe Susan Griffin is joining us remotely.
Good evening, Susan.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great.
So do you
Hi, I'm
want,
Susan Griffin, representing National Grid. Good evening, Town Manager and members of the Select Board. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you this evening. I submitted an updated report earlier this afternoon showing the current count of double pulls in the town of Chelmsford. I've made one change to this report. The pivot table that I built initially came through as a sum of days aged. That actually is not even a useful metric. What we're looking at is the maximum days of aging, but within the last 30 days, we've been able to take the double pull count from 62 down to 55. And I want to single out some of the gold star performance from AT&T Crown Castle and from the Chelmsford Fire Department, who very quickly were able to mitigate and remove their double pulls, which allowed the next to go. So as it stands today, National Grid has 9 transfers that are waiting on us. We've made those an absolute priority within our operations department, as we should. Just to walk you through the process, I've actually included a graphic further down the page that shows the way the process works today is National Grid is the first person on the pole. We set the pole, so whenever there's new infrastructure going in, it's always National Grid that is setting the pole, except in very unique circumstances where only Verizon needs a pole for themselves. But we set the pole, and on the day that we set the pole, we transfer the wires. I'm at a loss to understand why we have these 9 poles where we did not transfer our wires. The only thing I can speculate is that we may have had an auto accident where the pole was hit and we went out quickly to change the pole, but because there was so much equipment on the utility pole, transformers and other things, that for some reason we didn't make the transfers at that time. So we will do that. It's critical that we move along, because if we don't move, no one else can move off of the old pole. And I've tried to provide you with a graphic of the cadence for members of the audience that are watching from home. The process works as follows. National Grid sets a pole, whether it's during a storm, new infrastructure, a pole hit. We transfer our wires that same day, and all other assets, whether that's transformers or other pieces of equipment, reclosers that might be on the old pole. Then we update a database, which is known as Engines. It's the National Joint Utilities Notification System, where we enter the information into the system about that new pole, and we notify in the system that we have completed our transfers. That automatically triggers all of the other attaches on the pole next to go. So for instance, in the case of Chelmsford, it would be the fire department with its old fire wire. Either they would transfer it or remove it from the old pole. They would go into Engines, update that they've done their work. It would then notify the DPW department to move their streetlights. From there, there may be other attaches on the pole. They would get notified, and then it goes to fiber, folks like Crown Castle, then to Comcast, and then lastly, it goes to Verizon. So Verizon is always the last to transfer, and that's because they are generally the lowest line on the pole. And then Verizon removes the pole and does whatever restoration is necessary, either in the sidewalk or if it's in a berm on the side of the road, they do that compaction. So in a perfect world, that's how the process is supposed to work. When I look at the data statewide, I think there is work to be done on National Grid's part in improving our communications with notifying or even enforcing the terms of our contract to make sure that attachees are removing their wires in a timely manner. And so that's where we stand today. We have made some progress in 30 days. And I think with the right focus, we can very quickly clear up these last 55. It's important that we do actually get this process right, and I appreciate the town bringing this to our attention as a priority. As we look at electrifying large parts of the state in order to meet our 2050 clean energy goals, we're going to be seeing taller, fatter poles and an uptick in double poles as we do that. Because we're going to need to run additional feeders and basically build out the grid. Much of the grid that we have today is 75 to 100 years old. And so as we look to modernize that, there's just going to be a tremendous amount of infrastructure investment and construction work going on. And so it's important that we get this cadence right. And I would say that a large portion of that responsibility and improvement rests with National Grid at this moment. So I've made it a priority within my company, and I'd be happy to have Curtis Davis covers the town of Chelmsford. I'm sitting in for him today. But I would be happy to have him come back in 30 days time and provide the next update, which I think will show another dramatic improvement. Happy to take questions.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Any board members for Susan?
I've got a couple questions. Okay. Susan, I'll start with an easy one. Of the 55, almost half of them are Verizon, and they're the last to go. How do we get them to take action? Is that something that National Grid is responsible for, or is that something the town should do, or both? Or how do we get National Grid
moving? They're a good
moving?
partner of ours. I will take responsibility for speaking with the folks at Verizon, but in fairness to them, we moved they were at 12 double poles, and we just doubled their number in the last 30 days. So it's a trickle down effect. As we start to look better, others below us will look worse. But that's what we need to do in order to get everybody off of those poles.
Okay, second of my three questions. Second one, a little more difficult. The non-participating third parties, of which there's 11, there were 12 back on June 26th. How do we get action on the non-participating third parties? Because as by definition, they're not participating in this system that tracks double poles. And obviously, they're not National Grid or Verizon or Comcast, so they're parties that are unrelated or the town has no connection with. How do we get action on the non-participating third parties?
You've asked the $1 million question. First off, that should not be your responsibility to worry about that. National Grid and Verizon are joint owners of these poles. It's our responsibility to manage our tenants. But I will tell you that the biggest challenge we have faced in looking at this problem, not just in Chelmsford, but statewide, is not a lack of will on anyone's part. It's poor data. Over the course of 50 to 75 years, and some of these utility poles in the state are just that old, the record keeping was just very poor. And so in order to figure out who those non-participating third-party attachees are, we have to send an engineer out to each and every pole to inspect and try to determine who it might be. Sometimes, if we can get a bucket truck up, there's actually a tiny labeling on the wire itself, and from there we can figure out who it is. But a lot of the data that we're relying on from the engines database, and even within our own systems, is flawed. And so there's no other way to get to it but to manually go out and do a site inspection and figure out who is on the pole.
So to follow up to that second question, who licenses or authorizes these non-participating parties to be on the poles? Because the town didn't, a town doesn't. Is it the pole? Is it National Grid? Is it Verizon in Chelmsford? Like, who gives these people the authority to be there?
National Grid and Verizon together. We license them, but there are cases of illegal attachees on poles. And so then that represents another whole mitigation effort that we have to go through.
Okay. And then my final question, and that's basically the polls, double polls that aren't appearing on the list. There are double polls that don't appear on the list. How do we identify those and get those action on those double polls?
You know, that's a good question. I can tell you that my team of community managers and the community liaisons that support you during storms, when they come upon a double pole, especially one that looks to be in poor condition or looks to, may not even have any attaches on it. You know, folks bring those in as a one-off, and we work with Verizon to get those pulled and have the restoration done. So I think that's going to be the challenge going forward. I can tell you from, not from this list, but from prior lists, our numbers looked bigger because we were chasing double pulls that actually were not there. And that came from a site visit. And, you know, we made the resulting updates to the database to reflect that the poll wasn't even there. So I expect we are going to come across situations where there is no where there is a double poll that's not listed. And so I would ask you, when you do come upon those, to let Curtis Davis know about it, and he will get it into the system, and we'll have a site visit to figure out who needs to go into the database and mitigate their transfers.
So then National Grid National Grid in this case doesn't have any proactive or any regular inspection of the polls in a community. 'Cause I know you've got a lot of communities and a lot of polls. So I guess what I'm kind of concluding is, if the town were to go out and do a survey, we would then report them to National Grid saying these are a series of, or listing of double polls that aren't on the list, and then they would then be assigned ticket numbers and then put into the system? Or how would we go about
I mean, that would be one way we would do it. I will say,
I don't know any other method at this point.
Yeah, it's not that we don't ever, whenever we do reconductoring, which is rewiring, and we've actually done a number of substantial upgrades in Chelmsford. When we do those type of electric grid upgrades, we do survey the entire line, because we're going to be putting new wire on those utility poles. At the same time, I would expect in Chelmsford those instances to be very minimal, largely because the town of Chelmsford purchased its streetlights. And so we've already gone through a complete inventory of where poles exist and where you want to put streetlights and that.
But that's been over a decade ago. The town did the street lighting updating project over a decade ago.
Yeah.
So I
I
guess
think the one area where we do end up, and I don't have a good solution for it, but during a storm, we bring in hundreds of crew from the Midwest and from Canada. And those folks don't know our coverage area. We send them out with tickets that they're supposed to fill out when they set a new pole. But I think realistically, when they pull into a town, whether it's the town of Chelmsford or one of your neighbors, and there are 9 wires down in the middle of the road, and we're into our second day of outages, they're focused on getting the new poles installed and the infrastructure back up and the power turned on. And what we have found is that occasionally the documentation gets lost in that mix. So whenever there is an unaccounted for double pole, it's almost always attributed to storm restoration.
okay.
Not a good, good excuse for not having a solid process to account for that, but that's generally what happens when we do find that there's nothing in the database for a pole or a number of poles beside each other.
Yeah, because we noticed that even with the current project we're doing now, which is the relocation of the elimination of the substation in the center of Chelmsford, a number of the double poles on that project that are probably an ongoing project, which may be why they're not listed in the system.
Yes, I'm expecting all of those will come in a stack. And then what we will do is normally our in-house operations team handles the transfers. But when we do a large project like the one that we're doing with the substation decommissioning and moving that work to the Meadowbrook substation, normally we would bring in a large contractor who would just go down the line and handle mitigation of all those poles for us and get them in the system. Sometimes we will even, with an attachee's permission, sometimes we will even move, a next party's lines for them.
Okay.
In order to get, if we're dealing with something like 50 poles.
Okay. All right, Alice.
Okay, Virginia, do you have something else, or?
Oh, I guess you've sort of touched on three things that I remain concerned about. One is the number of double polls on this list that are in the register, and I realize that's the subject of these meetings we've been having. With respect to the double polls that exist that are not on your official register, I'm left a little bit concerned that you're agreeing that the onus for finding all those double polls that aren't on the register and identifying them is on the town to then tell you. And, I can tell you the one that's close to me that I had noticed wasn't on the register had nothing to do with a storm. And that kind of brings me to my third concern, which you've also alluded to, which is that something is broken in the National Grid process where double polls are being created and they're not getting into your official register. And, because that hasn't happened, now I think the exchange that the town manager and you just had said, well, yeah, if you could tell us what those are, we're happy to put them in the register. And frankly, I'd like to see National Grid take a little more responsibility for auditing the town and cleaning up this list and making it current, because it's not the town's fault that those polls are not on the list. And I guess with that, I just have a question. I don't know if it's for the board or Paul, but if the board were to exercise the Chapter 142 in the bylaw, can that 180-day period, is it just for the ones that are on the list, or can we extend it to say that there's a requirement that National Grid somehow work with us to get the missing double poles onto this list?
Well, the actual advertisement said the utility pole locations listed on the attachment as well as other locations in Chelmsford
Okay.
that do not appear. So, if we don't have those right now, we could,
We got to find them.
we have to find them, and we would probably have to set up another public hearing, right?
Right. Well,
Without having,
do we, but can how we're going to go about finding these be part of this hearing if we want National Grid to join with us in getting that done, rather than the town taking the responsibility to go identify all the missing poles and perform its own audit?
I've spoken to Christine Clancy, Public Works Director. She may have a why don't you offer?
Well, I
No, wanna bring her in.
understand there may be a way to do this,
No,
but I'm not happy about, it's the
agree.
town's, we can't do anything about it because it was our outside contractors from Canada that probably came here during a storm.
Right.
That's just not acceptable to me.
I agree, but what I'm going to ask Christine to explain is how we can sort of backside it to make sure that this gets resolved, because I think I share your concern, Virginia. If we just rely upon the utility to identify the poles, I'm not sure when it'll happen, and
Right.
for us to take action, we got to know where they are.
And if we help cooperatively clean this up
Right.
and get the missing ones on there, then my next question is, what changes on the process side, on National Grid's side, so that we don't come to another meeting and now there's 20 more missing poles, right? Like, the whole system has to be addressed, I think, not just little piece parts.
yeah.
Right.
So we want to hear what Christine has to say.
Sure. So, in talking through this with Manager Cohen, we have interns currently still with us. They've been very great to work with, very efficient. We have our plow routes, so we could go along our plow routes, drive that, and then as we see them, flag them, get the numbers, and give them to National Grid. I don't know exactly how long it would take, but I can't imagine it'd take more than a day or so. I mean, it depends how much they're stopping, and so if we see, I mean, if they're driving in an area and they don't see additional poles, but that's something that we were thinking doing with interns or a combination of someone from our highway department. I think it could probably be done relatively quickly. I do agree. I guess if we start seeing hundreds of poles, then that's going to take a lot more time. Maybe that's when we say timeout, we need more help. Maybe just that first, like, let's spend a day and just see what we can find. Was a suggestion.
Yeah, we can give you the list that we have, and then they can work off that and then find out what's added or missing from there. Because you're right, they're gonna have to stop, they're gonna have to get the poll number, record the address, and so forth. But at least it would give us something, because I'm afraid that otherwise it's like.
Right, I
it's
think
just
if
gonna-
you have a resource to help jumpstart
Right,
that,
let's
that's
jumpstart
great.
it.
I just don't want to see long-term that onus put on the town.
Right, but I think that problem may be addressed with our next discussion with our legislative delegation, because the utilities are regulated by the state, not the town. And so they're the ones who have the existing laws and requirements regarding double poles and so forth. And as I know Pat and George have, for years, Municipal Association and others have been trying to address the double pole problem. So that might be something we can discuss with the delegation, because I don't know how else we're going to get action on it.
Right. So Susan, if we were to come up with these numbers, these locations of double poles, and help you get to the point where we think everything is there now, I guess we would look to National Grid then to maintain that list going forward, so we don't have to do it again in another 2 or 3 years. So I guess, kind of reflecting what Virginia just said, we would expect that process to be, I guess, a little more robust than what we think we've been seeing.
I think that's more than fair. And I just want to clarify if I misspoke. In no way does National believe that the onus of auditing these assets should rest with the town. We appreciate the partnership that we have with the town of Chelmsford. But what I would say is we don't know what we don't know. If there are poles that are not on this list, then we don't know about them. And you might say, well, you should. The other thing is I'm theorizing why we might not know. I don't think it's a widespread problem of poles not being on the list, but I can theorize that if that's the case, it's likely due to emergency storm response, from people that are unfamiliar with the area, and so perhaps they didn't put the paperwork in. There is a process. We should expect our contractors to follow that process. But I think what the bigger issue is that I see is the responsibility that lies with National Grid, which is to move this list along. When I look at what's sitting in my queue, we have, and I would love to say the data is wrong, but I have to believe what I've got. We've got poles that have been sitting there waiting for our transfer for years. And I'm at a loss to figure out how that could possibly be. Why would we go out, assign a 3-man crew, take a bucket truck out of service, go out to a location, install a pole, and not transfer our wires? It makes no sense, but that's what the data tells me. So those are the types of things that we've focused on in this list as a high priority, and we will get this list complete. We will also work with our contracts group to make sure that our attachees do their piece. And as I said, Verizon has been very responsive in all the work that they've done statewide. They have a dedicated crew that do their transfers and remove double poles. And that process has been working really well. And they may not know that in the last 30 days, we've doubled the number sitting in their queue. But for them, that actually represents a good week's work, because they can send that crew just to Chelmsford and go along and get a lot of work done in one location.
Susan, one explanation may be that the list isn't accurate. I mean, it could be the case that there's a ticket number with a identified house number and pole number, which may not be accurate, and so you may be sending a crew out, and then they arrive, don't see anything, and then just move on. So, I mean, we're also assuming that that what's on this list is accurate in terms of poll numbers, and, you know, and location. My final question regarding the list is, there's a job type that lists transfer, poll, and then there's this category called dispute, some of which fall under National Grid. I guess what does that mean, dispute? Because they were all had to do with ball in the court of National Grid. It's basically that, on that list you provided us, it's like the 10th to the 16th down in terms of job type of dispute. And the word dispute kind of caught my attention.
Yeah, so what that means is within the database, for instance, when I do my transfer and I release the record, it goes to the next to go person or next to go company. And they may send a crew out and say, I'm not next to go. You know, that's not my wire. I'm 3 down. And so they dispute it, and it goes back to the person higher up on the line. So it would then go back to National Grid. And that's why I was mentioning, in order to get through this 55, I think there are going to be at least half of them where we're going to have to send a design engineer out to do a site visit and, you know, maybe get up in a bucket truck, and we're going to have to actually physically inspect what's on the pole and then update the database accordingly. You know, some of these poles and attachees, you know, they've been in the ground 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and attachees have just been added to the mix.
And you don't have the authority to just detach them? that'll get some attention real fast.
That discussion is going on in the company. We just brought in a new chief operating officer, and she's made this in fact, I have a meeting with her to go over our statewide statistics. We just had a meeting last week with the president of the company, Steve Warner, to talk about this. It's a high priority for him, and we are having a discussion about whether we will just move the attachees and charge them. Like, we cannot afford the damage to our reputation and the damage to the community's enjoyment by continuing this problem on and on and on.
Okay,
because it is a problem that's going to get more prevalent. We need to add more poles to the grid in order to meet our 2050 goals.
So you don't have the authority to basically sever them, right? I mean, if you find something that's not authorized on your pole, National Grid doesn't have the authority.
We certainly do. I mean, it's our real estate.
Right.
Yes, we most certainly do have the authority to remove someone who's not contracted to be on the pole. Because the safety requirements, the insurance requirements, all of that are very, very stringent. I mean, a lot of, folks are working out, when they go up in a bucket truck to do these transfers, as your own municipal folks know, and your own town electrician, you're working up in high voltage area. And so you really have to be electrically rated and certified to do that work.
But if the purpose of utility poles was for public good, because it was a public utility, telephone, electric, cable, fiber line, obviously municipal fire line. I assume these other parties who are attached to the lines are involved with some private for-profit business venture of which the town gets no benefit or revenue or other aspect from. I guess that sort of leaves an interesting question in terms of who has the authority. I guess it's National Grid apparently has authority to authorize others to attach to municipal utility poles that were granted by the town in the right-of-way. And I assume National Grid must get some financial benefit from allowing those attachments, right?
I would assume so. The town's benefit is that we pay real estate taxes on those utility poles, and for the use of that easement.
But no, this is a
Okay,
bigger issue.
we're getting a little bit off
Okay, I'm getting a
topic
little off
here.
track with the double poles,
Yeah,
but it's
so-
it's holding up, those non-participating third parties are holding up a significant portion of this list.
So
Right.
I'm just out of here, who are some of the non-participating third parties, for example? What kind of?
Yeah, who might that be,
businesses are they?
Susan? Who are these non-participating third
Could you
parties?
give us examples?
Quite candidly, I actually don't know of the one. Usually what happens, in my experience, when we identify this bucket, it ends up being a known provider, like Crown Castle or AT&T Fiber or, Comcast even. It's not a business organization that's running their own private internet
But
down the street on our poles. In fact, I'm not aware of any. That's not to say that that's not the case, but for the most part, it would be names that you would recognize, but we haven't been able to identify whose wire it is, so it gets thrown into this kitchen sink called non-performing third party.
Who does Crown Castle serve? And like, who are they, what's going through their cable? Fiber. No, I mean,
I mean,
You know what,
Anyway, I
I
know
don't
because
think
we
we
try to figure who they
care. We
are.
just want them to
Yeah,
move
we just
their
want them to
cable.
move it, yeah,
Yes.
but it's an interesting question because, it's creating issues for the double poles.
I
in
think
the
we're
town.
getting way off
Right.
topic here. So this is a public hearing, so does anybody have any comments? Any public want to speak? Apparently nobody in the room, any Zoom people? And before we close the public hearing and decide what to do, I do have one other comment. If, I'm glad we get this update today, although our policy for adding documents to our agenda is usually the Wednesday before the meeting. It's kind of difficult to review a report that we get just a couple hours before our meeting. So if next time you could keep that in mind, I mean, you know how much ahead of time we need when we have a petition, a poll petition, and if you could, be aware of that so that we can have this information in a more timely manner, that would be appreciated.
I apologize for that. This is what happens when Curtis is unavailable.
Okay, we'll blame it on Curtis.
Susan had mentioned that perhaps we could get an update from Curtis, and I'm thinking the board has a meeting in 4 weeks, which is almost a month that Susan talked about. Should we continue this public hearing until the 24th of August? I'm sorry, 21st of August? Or do you want to go to a
Well,
later
what
date?
end?
What's that?
To what end?
To see how much progress
See
they
what kind
make.
of progress is made, and if not, the board can issue an order.
And maybe
But
by
By then, we
then,
might have the data on the
we can
missing
have the
polls,
other.
too.
And if I just want to be clear, if we issue an order, they still have six
Right.
months from the date of the order.
Right, but if we don't issue an order, we'll be where we are
But I do think
today.
it would be helpful, if we're going to do our own assessment, I think it would be helpful
To
before
just
we
get a
issue an order to
comprehensive
have it
list,
and
so
know
we-
what we're looking
Yeah.
at.
Yeah, I think that would be beneficial if Christine can get the intern to get that in the next week or so and get as much as we know on this, and then when they come back, to have a better plan and maybe answers to some of these questions that Susan wasn't able to
Yeah.
answer,
Okay.
particularly about going forward, how it would work, so.
Can I just add one other? Susan, I appreciate the accountability that you're taking with this. My only other thought was that if there is a case where, it's an emergency and a storm, maybe there's something built into your process where, I don't know if it's a supervisor or technicians, but, within 2 weeks, they drive out and just do a visual inspection to make sure if there were double poles created, that they're put into the system, or, maybe it's a checks and balances thing that's missing, and you know much better than I do, but I would just offer that as food for thought.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'll bring that back to our operations group. It is puzzling because there are checks and balances. These are assets that come out of our inventory, and we're accountable for the cost of them. If you're going to take it from bucket A and move it to town B, we need to know where that investment has gone. And at the same time, there's an obligation to the town that if we're upgrading those assets, they are subject to an improved level of depreciation, which benefits the town in terms of tax revenue. So there are a lot of checks and balances with this. I've worked enough storms and nor'easters to know that particularly in your area up in the Merrimack Valley, it's so heavily treed, and when we get hard hit there, we really get hard hit. And so I can imagine that some of the paperwork with respect to getting the double pulls in the engine system, which is a completely separate process. I think we've got enough examples here that piece is falling through the cracks. So I'm going to bring that back to our operations folks and see what they can do about shoring that up, particularly as we move into the storm season.
So Susan, I guess I would ask you then, if we were to continue this hearing till August 21st, two questions. Would you or Curtis be available for that meeting? And second, in the meantime, would you make a good faith effort on these 55 that you have identified to address them before that time?
I'll do better than that. I'll make it a priority. I can represent the company in telling you that we will absolutely make these 55 a priority. And yes, I can commit to the August 21st meeting, but my hope is that I can send you the A-team in the form of Curtis. And if he's unable to make it, you'll get me.
Okay. Anything else?
Motion.
You want a motion?
Yes, please.
I will make a motion to continue the National Grid double poll hearing until August 21st, 2023.
Second motion.
Okay, with no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you. We'll
Thank
see
you,
you.
Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. So next up is Christine with a couple of reports for us.
Good evening. Tonight's the monthly ARPA update, so July's update. I also, as monthly, I have the updated spreadsheet, color-coded. Really want to look at the rows that are highlighted in red. But I guess before I go over the spreadsheet, I'll just give a quick update. So we have $7.9 million of ARPA funds that have been allocated. 6.45 million of that has been allocated to projects. Of the 82% have been procured. Of the overall procured amount, we also track how much has been spent to date, and that is 67%. We also are looking at potential overruns for each of the 46 itemized projects, and that has been consistent with the projection last presented in May, $750,000. That's in detail in the spreadsheet. And so we still have 1.9 million. So taking the 750 out of the balance, there's 1.9 million dollars in ARPA that has not been allocated, that remains to be allocated. That's the quick high-level update. And then I just to kind of go over some of the projects. I have the spreadsheet. I provide detail, an update on each of the projects. Just to go over some of the items. Number 15 is the Senior Center HVAC system. This project is opening this Wednesday. We did file sub-bids, I think it was a week or two ago, and so we should know Wednesday what that number is. So we're looking forward to that. That's really the last largest project. The remaining red sections that you're seeing, 14 and 17 through 20, are the testing and balancing HVAC system projects. It looks like it's many projects, but we have bundled these into really one project. We just haven't moved forward too much in the past month on these last projects. We've just been so focused on the construction phase of some of these projects. But we are moving forward with procuring the design, and from there, construction. That would be the last of it. We don't suspect these will be, substantially, some of the other projects that we've seen, some of the have, had some very large price increases. I guess we're not suspecting these to be too significant from what we've seen in some other projects. And then I highlight the Kensington Pump Station. We know that project overall cost us about $900,000. We only have, I think, $300,000 allocated from ARPA. That project, we're moving forward with procuring we have the generator, really what I call the shed, that component, building the housing for the pump station. That's being procured this summer. But we're not projecting any overruns because that project will be handled or completed outside of ARPA and through the sewer enterprise capital. One other update I just want to highlight, since the last time I presented the ARPA was 1B, we did award the 3-year on-call contract to NB Kenny. We only received one bid. It was significantly higher than we had anticipated. We were hoping around $570,000. It actually came in at $834,000. We're not projecting that I didn't change the number in the spreadsheet because we do carry typically some money within the facilities operation budget annually. So the difference between the $834,000 and the $569,000 will be paid out of the facilities operation. That's over a 3-year period. And we did check that number against some other communities, and we just dissimilar to some of the HVAC construction projects, the HVAC on-call projects also have seen significant increases. So even though that number is very high, it's relative to it's seen in other communities as well. I don't know if there's any specific questions. I guess there are still some items to just highlighted in yellow where it's partially procured, and we're just trying to finalize some of the last of the quotes, but not really seeing that those will be large differences. They're just finalizing the quotes, and then we would also be completing that work as well. I don't know if there's any specific questions, or I can go in more depth. I think just to highlight is this, for this ARPA, for this portion of the ARPA funds, we've just done so many HVAC projects in our town buildings and our schools, and that's been great. And so, we're very busy right now with the implementation or the construction component.
Any questions for
No.
Christine on this?
Just a closing
Screen.
comment. I think at this point, we'll come back next month start a discussion on how to allocate the balance of funds. You mentioned the 1.9 million. We're obligated under the federal act to have the funds committed by December of 2024. But I think we might as well, at least come back and begin the discussion on how to allocate the balance, so that, we keep our momentum going.
Can you define committed? Committed meaning we've decided how to spend it,
No,
or
no.
we've actually contracted with
No,
somebody?
meaning where do we wish to go with the balance that's unallocated? So we want to have that discussion with the select board, probably as early as next month, because we're starting to think, obviously, fall town meeting, we're starting to think, FY '25 capital plan, all that stuff. So I think it's probably at least start a dialogue on so that everything's sort of holistic in terms of where we're going. Because, as you know, once the calendar turns to September, it goes real fast with fall town meeting October 16th, and Darlene will be in next month or in early September with the balance sheet, the free cash, and fall town meeting, and I'll be here next meeting with the first draft of fall town meeting warrant. So I think it's part of that whole discussion that we'll at least come in and say, hey, here's some suggestions to the board to consider in terms of where to go with the funds that are remaining with the ARPA.
So who's making the suggestions? Yourself?
Yeah, Christine
Yeah,
and
so
I.
we've
yeah.
been
Ask
we've been
if Christine-
compiling a list. I would say, I think the focus here has been a lot of HVAC.
Yeah.
There's still some HVAC needs, I think, that we're potentially looking at, so that's on our list.
Is it-
There's a lot of with the summer that we've had, we're getting a lot of drainage inquiries. We are looking into a lot of neighborhoods. And so there's potential, and also we have currently under ARPA an assessment of the 14 culverts. So coming out of that assessment, that might recommend some projects. Doesn't necessarily have to be ARPA funded. It could also be a future capital or through the sewer or stormwater enterprise. But we're right now developing like a what's our next backlog of projects, and some could fall into ARPA.
Next month, we're going to specifically discuss.
Well, I don't
ARPA.
think we're
It
going to
might
make
be good to
decisions.
hear.
Not making a
next month.
decision, but I
No,
think we
no,
at least
no,
want-
no, no, but I would be curious to hear your thoughts
And if
on
you
where
have- and if-
specifically ARPA, you think ARPA funding would be.
And if you have some suggestions too, obviously, you know,
Right,
we
yeah.
can make
Yeah.
suggestions.
There's some
Yeah.
capital stuff as well that we would look at as well, capital equipment and so forth.
Yeah, we talked about some sewer, some of like the putting some added flow metering at some of the pump stations. That's another project that would help with some of our efforts for II removal. So we have a number of potential projects, and we can present that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to at least
Okay.
throw that out there, that we're starting to look holistically at all the needs, including streets, sidewalks, capital equipment, and so forth. So, okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. The next update, and this is kind of an announcement to it, as far as I think it was in May, I was before the board, going over our pilot inflow removal program, and we have advanced that before you see on the screen. This is the one-page flyer that we will this week start distributing. This will be on our website, social media, news flash. We also have targeted 400 residents that fall within the lowest lying levels of the town. So we did a GIS spatial overlay, picked 400 properties. So we will do a targeted mailing to those 400 properties. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be one of those 400 properties to sign up. Really, anyone that has a sump pump that is hard piped to their sewer is eligible to participate in this program. Right now is the time to sign up. Actually, anyone can go online and sign up right now. What we've done is we set up a sign up through SeeClickFix. SeeClickFix is, if you go to our main webpage, it's available on our main webpage. On here, it says www.townofchelmsford.us/524/SeeClickFix. Once you get into SeeClickFix, there's different categories that you can select. We've added a new category called Sump Pump Inspection Program. So when you click that asks for your address, it asks some series of questions. You can put a picture of your sump pump if you want, not required. And from there, you'll get entered. We ask for your contact information. Then we'll basically be establishing this database, our contact database, and our consultant will then start to do inspections. We hope to start them in a couple weeks. It just depends on that initial wave of response. We are targeting 70 inspections, but I guess this is a pilot, and so if we get more and it's well received, we might do more inspections. It just depends, because we did have a meeting with DEP, and I think we'll be presenting next month, and DEP might want us to do some more drastic inflow removal investigations next summer, depending on the success of this program, or either way. So by participating in this program, we can get a head start on the pilot inflow removal program. Like I said, this information also, if anyone has any questions, they can go to our DPW sewer website. This will also be on there. They can call the main number, 978-250-5228. They could also email. We have our contact, Sharon Boyer, in our office. She'll be also available to answer or to take inquiries or people to sign up as well. The inspection itself shouldn't, I would say, within less than a half hour. It's just accessing the basement to see the sump pump, the connection, potentially some dye testing. That's not harmful at all to your toilet or your fixtures. And from there, we would, take that information and come back later on with recommendations for opportunities for separation or removal of the inflow.
But are there any guarantees if somebody signs up for this that they will be part of the program? Is it first come, first served, or how is
So
that?
we say it's first come, first served, but it also depends on, so that's why we say that you may be eligible. right now we have to make sure you have a viable solution. So if you come to us with a sump pump and there's no infrastructure on your street and you have a yard that floods frequently, it might be very difficult to separate that storm drain. So that's why we'll take all the data, go through a cost benefit analysis, make recommendations on what is feasible. I think anything's feasible for what dollar value. So we just want to understand what that. We have to get through that analysis, but by signing up for the program now, because right now you're not allowed to have some pumps connect to your sewer. So at a later date, if DEP requires us more, or if we have more efforts and we find some pumps are legally connected, you wouldn't be part of the program. Is eligible right now. The plan is to do this program this 2023. So in the future, we can't say that will be having this program in place. And so at that point, if we find a sump pump that is illegally connected, say in a year from now, you wouldn't be eligible for this program.
But you still would have to address it.
You still would likely have to address it, especially if we're required by DEP.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Christine about this?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So if you're following along on the agenda, the next two items we are deferring for this evening, the performance appraisal for town accountant Darlene Lucia will happen on our August 21st meeting, and performance appraisal for town manager Paul Cohen. I believe that we're going to do that on the 14th. Is that right, Paul?
I don't know. You may want, I'd have to check with the chair. I don't know if you want to do them the same night.
Yeah, well, they're both then deferred till August anyway. So we're going to go on to the expression of interest for the strategic plan. Paul, do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, members of the board. When we last discussed this, we had the 7 proposals that were received, and only one of them actually provided a estimate of what the cost might be for the service. So as the board requested, I reached out to the 7 proposers, those who submitted an expression of interest. They responded with various lengths of responses in terms of the cost estimates. They all provided them. I provided in the packet some of the more detailed responses, just to give you a little bit of insight in terms of why things cost the way they were. As you can see, the costs range from $40,000 up to, I guess, a total detailed one of $145,000. But I think you can sort of see the area of cost is probably as a median and an average of around $100,000 for this type of work. Again, the numbers vary significantly because what the expression of interest in terms of their proposed scope of work would vary as well. So, but I think hopefully this provides the board with a sense of what the cost may be for, to conduct this work. And I think probably the next step from that, and I also received an 8th proposal from after deadline since the last meeting, so I included that in there just so you had it. That was the first one that's listed there, and it's attached from Ann Donner. So I just wanted to provide that to the board. I suppose the next thing that would come from me at this point was next month when I provide you with a draft of fall annual town meeting warrant articles, I would include funding for a strategic plan on that list, barring any other direction from the board at this point.
Right, it was my understanding the reason for this is to see if we wanted to put something
Right,
on the
exactly.
on the warrant, right, and
yeah.
what that amount might be.
Right, but recognizing that the full board isn't here tonight, I think my next step would be to throw it on the list of draft warrant articles and then have that discussion with the board next month.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, and if, I think we need to take a little time with that to say, okay, what are the major, in our expression of interest, we had kind of the major chunks that we wanted to address in terms of getting, public input and things like that. And there seems to be a wide spectrum of how you could go about that, or some people who responded may not even do some of the steps, or some may do more than what we asked for. So my thought is that it looks like we're probably going to be asking for 100, maybe 125, just to give ourselves some cushion, and then we shoot for 80 to 100, I think is what I'm seeing from this. But I think we want to have, going into town meeting, an idea of what's the scope of what we're going to be asking for. A simplified version of the expression of interest or something like that.
Yeah, because in September, when the Finance Committee meets to review the warrant that you're scheduled to sign on September 11th,
Right.
they're going to want to hear from the board in terms of, well, what are you asking for and what's it consist of? So you're right, we have to have that discussion next month, or beginning of September, yeah, and/or beginning of September.
Okay, anything else? If not, we'll go on to Town Manager Bid Awards.
Yeah, just one bid award this evening, and that again pertains to Public Works. And this is for the boiler replacement at the Center Elementary School. Public Works bid this work. There were 2 bids received. The recommendation, and I'm seeking the board's confirmation to award it to the lowest responsible bidder, which in this case was the low of the 2 bidders, Elanco Service Corporation. The bid amount is $87,650.
Okay, any questions about this bid?
I will make a motion to approve the town manager's award for the boiler replacement at Center Elementary School to Elanco Service Corporation as presented.
Second.
Okay, if no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Okay, 4-0.
Right, thank you.
Okay, and Town Manager reports.
Yeah, this one actually it originated from Virginia. She had communicated to me a week or 2 ago that, no, less than 2 weeks, but obviously within the last 2 weeks since the last meeting, that she'd received a notice from the MBTA regarding the advisory board, and it sort of struck her that it's been a year since we last sort of recruited unsuccessfully for a member to serve on the advisory board, how it works under statute, and we sort of brought back the materials from a year ago, as you can see, is under the enabling legislation by the state, the advisory board member is the chief executive officer of the community or the chair of the select board, which in this case is Mark Carrata, or the authorized designee. And so at this point, the position remains vacant. We can try to, publicize it again to see if you remember the last time, the person had to be a rider of the system if it wasn't, to be a designee.
Right.
So I don't know.
And that hasn't changed.
That hasn't changed, no.
Who was the rider of the system? Other select board members?
No, anybody has to be, not to be a
It can
designee.
be the chair.
The chair can do
The chair
it.
or a rider.
Chair or a rider, so
But you said
anybody
rider of the designee has to be a rider of the system.
of the MBTA system, yeah. So in other
So
words.
that means a commuter rail or
Commuter
the...
rail.
Karen, you've got
No,
to
it's-
talk into the mic.
Yeah, somebody, the commuter rail, so forth. So basically, if anybody in Chelmsford wants to be the town's designee to the MBTA advisory board, the qualification is you have to be a rider of the, in our case, the commuter rail. Or I guess if you drove, I guess, to Alewife and rode the subway, I think that would count as well. Or, yeah, if you rode, but basically you need to utilize the MBTA system. So again, we just raised this and we'll try to promote it again. We were unsuccessful a year ago, but it's been some time. And obviously, things have not improved in the MBTA in the past year.
You'd think some unhappy commuter would be
Yeah.
happy to get on there and
Yeah, but
voice
then you have
voice
to...
an opinion.
then
You have to go to the
Boston
meetings. Yeah, you have to-
the
then you have to-
meetings, yeah.
Right, exactly, so that's,
Don't they do them all online, all the meetings?
I don't think so.
They may not be...
We can make
able-
that a selling point.
They may not be able to after a while.
Yeah, all right. All right, that's my, thank you, Metro, that's my report this evening, and the next item is, I'll leave you,
Okay.
your appointment.
All right, so next we have a couple select board appointments. Well, yeah, 2 select board appointments. The first, the annual election workers. We have a lengthy list that Tricia provided to us. Anybody have any concerns or questions or anything about anyone on that list?
I'll make a motion to approve the annual election worker appointments as presented.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And the second one is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. We have the application again for Jen Melanson, and I notice that she is here in the audience. If anybody has any questions or anything for her, or how we want to go forward with this.
I'll make a motion to approve the appointment of Jen Melanson to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for a 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2026.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, and then we have town manager appointments.
Yeah, members of the board, last Saturday evening was sort of the last act of the 2023 Parade Committee. The terms of the Parade Committee always expire at the end of July, and that was that way because obviously the parade doesn't happen until the 4th of July. And then this year, because the concert that the Parade Committee had scheduled for July 2nd was postponed due to inclement weather, it was finally took place last Saturday evening. There were about 100 people in attendance on the Common, and those who attended, it was an enjoyable 2 hours in nice weather. So, long story short, is I reached out to the members of the 2023 Parade Committee, and all the people who are listed there wish to be reappointed to the committee. So there's 11 appointments: Candace Chase, Samuel Chase, Paige Gillette, Jeffrey Hardy, Eric Lindstadt, Charles Marcella, Lynn Marcella, Kirk Marshall, Brian Reedy, Karen Reedy, and Richard Romano, seeking the board's confirmation to appoint them to serve as the Parade Committee, and again, this term would then end July 31st, 2024. So that's one that we do on an annual basis, and the reason for that is the Parade Committee is such a huge undertaking that I don't think we'd get takers to do staggered terms of multiple years. So that's
Even
why.
though these people have been the same people for how many
Yes,
years now?
but the
It
mess.
actually looks like less people. Is it?
Yeah, there were a
is it
couple that
less
dropped
than-
off. Yeah, there were a
I was
couple
gonna
that dropped
say,
off in the year. We're down to a core of 11, and so that's what I'm seeking for a 1-year term for those 11 people.
You ready for a motion?
Yes.
I will make a motion to confirm the town manager reappointments to the Parade Committee for a term ending July 31st, 2024, as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Next is meeting minutes. We have the one set from July 10th.
I will make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of July 10th, 2023, as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. And we have some announcements for determination of releasability of executive session minutes. Minutes that will be released are June 26, 2023, segment 1, and July 10th, 2023, segment 2, and minutes not to be released June 26th, segments 2 and 3. Okay, we're to liaison reports. George, you have anything tonight?
That's all right.
Okay, Virginia?
Just from the the Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee, they just want the public to know they're having a virtual meeting on August 10th, and they welcome anyone who can join them for that. And when you're done with regular liaison reports, I just would like to ask a scheduling question.
Sure. Erin, any?
So I do have a report from the Commission on Disabilities. The Commission on Disabilities has been remote for quite some time, and they are in person again as of last month, meeting every third Tuesday at the library. So that's exciting. They also wanted me to share that they are working on a project with Chelmsford Telemedia to create an interactive map of accessible parking with companion explainer videos to explain signage and parking spot markings to people, and maybe potentially trying to put them on the town website or something like that in the future. That's kind of interesting. I also have an update from Representative Cataldo. He wanted to let everyone know that on the 13th, the House passed a $693 million supplemental budget. So there is some stuff going on there. He also mentioned that he last hosted July 20th, some evening hours at the library to kind of mix things up so that people could get him outside of work hours. And it was well attended, and they are resuming office hours in September. And in the meantime, people can reach out to his office anytime by phone or by mail. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple announcements. First of all, two passings of note recently. First of all, former Select Board member Bob Joyce, who passed away last week. He was involved in a lot of things around town. He was on the planning board, he was on the sewer commission, he was a member of the Neshoba Valley Technical High School Committee. He was around and about a lot, so he is definitely going to be missed. So condolences to Bob Joyce's family. And also Sandy Rainey passed away recently. She has been lately very active with the Lions Club and did a lot of the work for the country fair the day before the 4th and the 4th. And she's also, as you probably know, has been very active on Facebook as a moderator. So again, she is going to be missed. She did a lot around town. Congratulations to our new sergeant, Matt Fernald. He was promoted last week from patrol officer to sergeant, so congratulations to him. Last week we had a ribbon cutting at Dave's Hot Chicken. It was really good. I had a sample. It wasn't real hot. Well, mine wasn't real hot, but it was hotter than the samples that some others had that seemed to kind of wimp out on the hotness. But we won't mention any names. And just lastly, I want to mention, if you are watching us on Comcast Channel 99 tonight, on Thursday this week, you will have to switch to Comcast Channel 6 in order to watch these meetings going forward. So again, if anything you've been watching on Channel 99 will change over to Channel 6 if you're a Comcast subscriber. So, and I hope that we're going to have something posted on the website maybe about that.
We can do that. Although
Okay.
Comcast is supposed to have notified their subscribers. But
Well, they did on the bill, but who reads their bills?
Okay.
You know?
Paul,
Yep.
in our next agenda where they have the Zoom link, you might want to just put that, like just a
Okay.
typewritten note on the agenda to remind people for TV viewers.
So that's all I had, and you had a scheduling?
Yeah, so our first meeting in August was when they had, when we reviewed the calendar, it was when we were going to have the goals discussion. And when we were reviewing the schedule, I had brought up, do we want to have a dedicated goals discussion like we've done the last at least 3 years, maybe longer. So I just wanted to bring that up because it seems like that first meeting in August is really starting to pile up with a lot of stuff. I went back and I actually pulled the work session minutes from the last 3 goal sessions that we did. Last year, it took us an hour and a half.
It's not a quick thing.
The 2
Right.
years before that, it took us 2 hours. So I know we've scheduled the meeting like for a different day that week, or we've put in an extra Monday, but I just wanted to bring that up. And unfortunately, we're missing one person here. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I feel that it really warrants a little more time than
Yeah.
just
Right.
an item on a regular agenda. We'll never get through it
Right.
with the attention that it deserves.
I agree. I totally agree with you because, yeah, if you have it at the beginning of the meeting, then nobody wants to do anything once it's over with. And if you have it at the end of the meeting, everybody's too tired to talk about it.
Right.
So, and, yeah, it does deserve more than a 20-minute discussion. It's, I expect it would be at least an hour, if not longer. So, I mean, that's, I don't know, I guess it is the chair's discretion, so he's not here today, so I don't know how we're going to do that, if it would be on the 14th and move everything else to the 21st, or what would happen with that. But I think if he's aware of our, and you agree?
I
with-
agree. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it probably warrants its own.
Okay.
It's important, and we should take our time and get it.
And George, any thoughts from you on that?
Whatever's good for.
So I guess because we've got to do scheduling in the office for next month in terms of public hearings and license hearings and so forth. So I'll instruct Christina and I'll talk with Mark when he's available, is basically we'll pull everything off, push everything off to the 21st meeting next month, if it ever possible, except any particular item that you know, so that if there is something that has to come up, for example,
Right.
what I would do is, we'll put everything on to the 21st, and we'll try to devote the 14th meeting exclusively to goals. However, for example, what I will ask to do is, I will give you, for example, a draft warrant, because after the 21st, you'll be signing the warrant on September 11th. So, in other words, it'll just be minor things. I'm not going to, basically, I'll just make sure the board has it, so that way it doesn't, create issues. But I guess what I'm hearing is, try to exclude virtually all of the meeting on the 14th to goals, and then the 21st to other business of the
Or
board.
can we do that the other way around?
No,
So we have a
well,
little
I know
buffer
you're not going to be able to
between
do it, because I know, for
we-
example, Darlene can't be here on the 14th.
And we just scheduled National Grid
to the
officially for the
21st.
21st.
Oh, we gave them,
Okay.
oh, I was thinking we gave them the
Okay,
14th.
so
Yeah, we-
we'll do the 14th almost exclusively, and I just use the word almost, in
I mean,
case there's something that comes
it's-
up.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the first presentation of the town meeting warrant, I mean, that's usually not a quick one either, quite
But I'll just
frankly.
give, if I can get it to you ahead of time in the packets and ahead of time, we don't have to belabor it at the meeting, but I just wanted to point out, is like, I don't want to say 100% of the meeting could, because then, but, and who knows what else could arise that may need, like, for example, anyway, I get the sense of the board, and that's how we'll handle it. And I'll talk to the chair
I
when
don't
he's
know
available.
about the rest of the board, but I would say if things, depending on the urgency, if things are piling up, if we need to schedule another meeting, like on Monday, August 28th.
I'm not
Oh,
available the
you're not
28th.
available, okay.
Which is
that's
fine,
why
you can
we're
meet
not-
without me, but I
No,
mean,
no,
that's
I
where it
passed
comes.
that. We'll just have a long meeting on the 21st.
Apparently, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, unless Mark has some strong objections.
Okay.
I guess you should
That's what we'll do.
plan
We'll
on
do it.
that.
Okay.
Okay, so, do we have a motion?
I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session for the purpose of reviewing the executive session meeting minutes of July 10th, 2023, segment 1.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. George?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4-0, so we are adjourned to executive session. Sounds like
We're just approving minutes.